School attendance is a growing concern, particularly in disadvantaged areas, with a recent ESRI report showing that 1 in 3 pupils in such schools misses a month or more of class. I'm joined now by Patricia Vaughan, the principal of Furglan National School, and Agnes Hehir, principal of St Joseph's Community College in Kilkee, to discuss the challenges their schools face and the measures being taken to support regular attendance. And you're both very welcome to the programme. Patricia, the ESRI report shows 1 in 3 pupils in disadvantaged schools missing a month or more of school. Does that reflect what you're seeing in your school?
Morning, Alan. We're rural desh here in Furglan National School, and we've only got our desh status for the last 4 years, so we're kind of still very new to this. And I was looking at our figures now, before I came on air, and we're just slightly below the national average, which I think is very, very, very good. We have put a lot of different incentives in place to improve. Attendance is exceptionally important. When we're doing our DESH action plan, there are 6 different strands, Alan: literacy, numeracy, transitions, partnerships, others. But attendance is one of them. So for DESH schools, attendance is always on the table. And in the past, before we became DESH, we would have higher attendance levels. I will be honest about that. We did have higher levels back even maybe 10 years ago. The levels would have been much higher than what I'm seeing at the moment. But at the same time, I'm not seeing the figures that you're saying, like about 1/3 in a month. I'm seeing nothing like that. I still would have figures well into the 90s, 92.5%, 93%, which is, I think, is very good for a DESH school.
Okay, Agnes, what about the situation at St Joseph's Community College?
Hi, Ellen. It's very similar to Patricia for us. Again, we're very similar in status to Patricia because we are also rural-ish, which means it's a case of it's transport links, etc., that are the actual reason why we have got DESH status. There are different bands of DESH, and it's kind of got to do with a band 1 where they are very disadvantaged kids. We are not in that bracket, thankfully. I suppose, as regards the ESRI, I suppose, like everything, paper never refuses ink, and we need to look at the different actual reasons for this actual these results. And if you look at, there are shortcomings in the data. 1/4 of the schools didn't submit data amid administrative burden and limits on linking absences with different actual circumstances. We also have to look at, there is still COVID there. There's spikes in COVID. It is still rampant. The other thing is I think it's unfair to actually paint a picture as regards that it's DESH schools that have higher ending up and school attendance problems, because the other side of that is you end up and you get extra accommodations for schools in this bracket. And we'd say, we would end up and we would do attendance drives at different times where we would look at the data and we would say, okay, there was a kind of a dive, a small little bit last year because of different reasons. But if you're looking at mental health services, among children and parents, addiction issues, you've illnesses, you've medical appointments, you've therapeutic appointments. That's not just DESH schools. That's across the board. If you talk to any principal or deputy principals in any school. Yeah,
so it's not a DESH specific issue. And I suppose, Patricia, when you see illnesses accounting for almost half of absences at primary level, unexplained absences also significant. As Agnes is saying, unexplained absences and illnesses can happen at any school.
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. I mean, we're no different, and I totally agree with what Agnes has said there. We're no different to any other school. And since COVID particularly, which is almost 6 years now, we have noticed that parents are more particular about when it comes to illnesses. That they're, one time they might be home for 3 days, now they might be home for 4 or 5.
And are they they're more likely post-COVID to keep them at home if they fear they have it, or if they hear that maybe another pupil has it and they're just worried about them being around it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we have fabulous, diligent parents here. And, we always say to them, well, attendance is so important. We don't want the parents to send in children that are sick, because then there's the risk of infecting. I'm not even talking about COVID. I'm talking about tummy bugs and colds and all these different things. We always say to the parents, while it is so important to attend school and be there, but not to send in your children when they're sick. And I have noticed that, Alan, that when children are out, they're out that little bit longer, and they have more frequent illnesses as well throughout the year. They might be sick in September, again then in January, or might have another one in May. They could be out 3 different times from illness. And definitely I find in my school, the attendance level is excellent in the sense that for the non-sickness, the parents are fantastic to send their children in. They send them in. That really, it's only when they are sick. We're not finding here, Alan, parents that are deliberately keeping their children at home, taking days out and not sending them in. We don't have any of that. We have huge cooperation, because in our DESH action plan, one of the strands is partnership with parents, and we have a fantastic open door policy here in Furglan with our parents. They're welcome to come in, and they can come and talk to me. I remember, Alan, during COVID, parents used to ring me up, and I felt like I was the GP, and I have this, my child has this and this, what do you think? And my role changed completely there about 6 years ago. That the parents, had placed so much trust in their school principal that when they had concerns about their child was ill, they might have had COVID, might be COVID in the next room, that they came and they talked to me and they spoke. And I think we've continued that relationship now. If a child is sick, Alan, the parents will ring me in the morning and they say, look at...
Okay, so there is that closer connection between parents and... Agnes, I just wonder how much of any absenteeism you might see it can be linked to socio-economic factors, and how that could affect a student's ability to attend regularly, or could that be potentially overstated?
To be honest, I think it's overstated. I think if you look at all external factors, if you look at climate change and everything, if you look at the amount of storms we've had, so in rural areas, you're ending up and you're relying on bus services, etc. Okay, so there is that element. Yes, 100%. I would say that there may be some areas where it's the case of and this would be across the board, parents going on holidays in term time, because it's a lot cheaper. So you could be talking about 1,000, 1,500 euros of a difference, and especially if it's a bigger family. So there are that. As regards CAM's appointment, there is definitely a big spike in mental health. And I suppose if you were to look at anything, if you talk to any principal, what they would be saying is, as regards CAM's appointments, as regards medical appointments, therapeutic appointments, trying to get counsellors. So say for argument's sake, you're living in Kilkee. If you're trying to get a counsellor, you have to go over to Ennis. Now, we're very lucky that we have a counsellor coming into the school here. But again, you have only an amount of appointments there, and we have someone coming in every Thursday, and they end up and they get 6-week interventions. You also have support teams and kind of student support, so you've got care teams. Also, I think the advantage of a rural school is it's a smaller actual school. So as Patricia said, you have a much better link with the parents. You know what's going on. They will end up and they will send you an email. They'll send you, they'll end up and they'll ring the school and they'll actually say why the student is out, or they will end up and say, look, it may be COVID, it's tummy bugs, etc. But and also we are very much, because of ending up and being on the DESH action plan, the partnership with parents. So we have ended up and we have built our parents association in our school, just to give the extra bit of support to parents, because the reality is everyone is struggling to a certain extent. We don't know what's happening in the background in any people's lives. You've got one-parent families, you've got two-parent families, you've got people that are out working, you've also got working from home. So there is an element of school avoidance, anxiety and school reluctance. But that's across the board. It's not just for DESH schools. Okay,
it's not, it isn't DESH specific. I just want to ask you about the part the Department of Education is playing, Patricia. They've issued attendance grants to support schools.
Yes.
Where, insufficient attendance may be a concern. Do you think they're helpful in engaging pupils at risk of poor attendance?
Well, Alan, I think it's a fantastic. This came in 2023-24 school year, and it was meant to be a once-off payment, an attendance campaign support grant. And so they sent it in 23-24 year, and they told us this is for a once-off. It's to promote and support the regular school attendance. But we've got it since. So 2 years later, and I look back on my grants there today, and we got it in December. So I'm a small little school, so I get 500. I'm sure Agnes gets a lot more than that. But 500 is a lot of money. And we've developed some lovely initiatives. So we actually now reward attendance. And always in the past we used to reward full year attendance. But think about it on how we had one child last year with a full year, no day missed. It's very, very difficult. So what we decided to do was to break it down. With this €500, we staff sat down and our board of management and said, we'll do monthly prizes. So every single month in September right up to the end of June. And that way children, if they didn't get it in September, they had a chance of getting it in October. And you found that parents weren't sending in the children that were ill to get and what we did was maybe prizes €8 to €10. And maybe 3 or 4 would get it every month. And it was we wouldn't have been able to do that without that campaign support. And I'm very grateful to the department because it's not been once off. They've given it to us 2 subsequent years, and hopefully they'll give it again next year.
Yeah, that
seems to continue doing that.
Yeah, and for such a small amount of money, it's clearly making a big difference. So you would hope it would continue from here on in.
Yeah.
And Agnes, that approach, using taking the carrot rather than stick approach, is that the way to go? Incentivising students where they'd be less likely to be absent, and that avoids the need for parents and schools to get involved, because students they want to come in because they want to get their hands on that 10, that €20, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. I think we're in a different society now, Ellen, insofar as it's kind of a barter system all the time, and we're ending up, and it's a case of as regards parenting, and it's no different in schools where it's a case of you're ending up, you have to actually sit down and speak to the students in this case of, right, if there is a problem as regards attendance, what are the actual background? Because there's different reasons for it. It could be a case of in a rural area, it could be they missed the bus. Their parents could be working, so they would have no lift to school later on. So there are different reasons for it. I think the attendance drive is a fantastic idea, and we do have it here as well. Not only that, I think when you're ending up and when you're on a DESH actual status, you end up obviously ours is rural DESH. There is an urban DESH and there's band 1. That has got to do with chronic absenteeism. We don't fall into that category, but we still get the same actual opportunities, and we would get the advantages of it. So we would have a homeschool liaison person. So that person, so it's Clodagh in our school, she would end up and she would actually speak to the parents. So sometimes if it was a case of that there might be a child that didn't actually want to come to school for different reasons, we might end up and we might do a house visit. We would have school completion. We also have Adriana Meir, who comes in and ends up and actually works with some of the students for small interventions and school completion program. So it's a case of, I think the key to all of this is that you end up and you nip it in the bud at the beginning, because sometimes you can have students who have had a problem when they were coming from primary school and it follows on. There's also the actual area of friendship. So the Beacon Altar program actually really helps that. And while people end up and want to say that there's no bullying going on in any schools, Beacon Altar helps that insofar as you're dealing with it a lot faster, because it's coming to the fore a lot faster. But there are emotional difficulties as well. And I suppose we'd say students were ending up and they were used to being at home during COVID, and I did find definitely post-COVID there were some students that ended up and did find it more difficult because social anxiety, never mind anything else. And I find, even as regards, I was teaching myself, I found at the very beginning you were kind of that bit quieter, or we'd say COVID was like the plague to a certain extent at the beginning, and it was a case of you were standing at the other side of the road in case that you would end up, because if you had vulnerable neighbours or friends or family. So it definitely did have an effect. Do I think it's as bad as the ESRI results? I think it depends on the school. Thankfully, we're delighted that it hasn't been that bad for us. And I suppose also probably when it's a small school, you end up the smaller primary and secondary schools. There's probably a little bit of social pressure as the teachers and the students know each other, and you spot the problems earlier on, so you're able to deal with them and put interventions into place.
Okay, my thanks to both of you for giving us your perspectives on that. Really interesting to hear that it's not a DEIS school-specific issue. Agnes Hehir, there, the principal of St. Joseph's Community College in Kilkee, and the principal of Furglan National School, Patricia Vaughan. Thank you to both of you for being with me on Morning Focus.